Chair, members. My name is Jeanne Casteen with Secular AZ, and I stand in strong opposition to SB 1741, a bill that would override district-level decisions, disregard each district's unique needs and goals, and prohibit voters and families from determining what is best for their community by mandating school districts give religious programs access to public school students during the day. This mandate is a clear example of government overreach and a direct attack on local control. School boards should continue to have full discretion over which extracurricular programs should have access to students instead of being forced to follow mandates from state government. Release time programs harm academic outcomes, violate students' rights, and would expose Arizona's public schools to legal liability. These programs detract from the efforts of public school educators and administrators to prioritize student academic success using evidence-based practices. States that have implemented mandatory release time programs like this one have worse educational outcomes because students are pulled away from necessary classroom instruction and sent off campus for religious indoctrination. As a result, participants fall behind their peers. Laws like this are also used by religious groups to pressure and proselytize students during the school day. Religious groups like LifeWise Academy have exploited and expanded the scope of these laws to gain additional access to public school students. Release time programs are now used to violate the fundamental right to religious freedom rather than support it. This bill would expose schools to legal challenges and waste taxpayer resources. It entirely removes local control by requiring districts to adopt a release time policy. In other states where mandatory release time laws have been enacted, districts have become the target of lawsuits because the predatory tactics used by programs violate students' and parents' religious freedom rights. Arizona taxpayers want their dollars to fund high-quality public education for all, not be wasted defending unconstitutional mandates in court. This bill is not about safeguarding students' religious freedom. In fact, it undermines that goal. Instead, this bill would harm educational outcomes, improperly promote religion in public schools, and place schools in dangerous, expensive legal territory. Please protect students, families, and taxpayers by rejecting this bill. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? Representative Fink.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you Casteen?
Ms. Casteen, Jeanne Casteen.
Jeanne Casteen, I apologize. I was just wondering, where did you get the data that kids who participate in release time do worse academically? I had several of my kids go through release time and were top of their class.
This comes from actually the American Atheist, so if you'd like, I can follow up with an email to provide that information for you.
Okay. Mr. Chair.
Please.
Yes, because I'd be very curious because also I know many other students that did participate in a release time and they did very well academically. So that's
they have data instead of anecdotal examples.
Any additional questions? All right, Representative Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Casteen, for being here. I know you were here when we saw the House version of this bill. But you said LifeWise had a national campaign. Can you speak more to that about, like, why a national campaign and what do they stand to gain because of it, please?
I won't speak to the motives of the folks who run this nonprofit organization. I say nonprofit because their budget in 2020 was about $1.5 million. It's in 2025, $37.5 million. It's run largely by volunteers, so that means it's very. There's some pretty big salaries happening there. They have a machine, basically, similar to like ALEC, I guess, in promoting model legislation. They've been exposed also as going behind the backs of voters and also keeping the public out of their meetings with government officials, specifically in the states of Ohio and Indiana, I believe, if I'm speaking correctly.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Simicek.
Thank you. Ms. Casteen, can you speak a little bit about, to follow up on that question, the lobbying, so where how much is being spent by this particular LifeWise over the years?
I'm going to pause, and I let the question that Representative Gutierrez go because I thought we were wrapping up, but the question needs to be tied to the bill, and you're asking, there are components of this bill that have nothing to do with the lobbying efforts of an organization. So please keep your question to the bill.
Mr. Chair, the reason I'm asking is because this is why we're hearing the bill. It's from this organization. This would be releasing students to this organization. So I'm confused on why I'm not allowed to, where we were curious as like where this has come from and why it's expanded, and I'm curious to know.
Well, we're hearing the bill because I decided we were going to hear the bill. No one has lobbied me on hearing this bill or the House version. I looked at the policy and thought, I think it's great that parents have the ability to send their kids for release time, for religious instruction, and I think that it builds the whole child. We talk about the whole child. I think spirituality and faith is part of that. So I don't even know who LifeWise is. I haven't been contacted by anybody about this bill to tell me to put it on the agenda. I reviewed it in the list of all the bills that have been transmitted from the Senate to the House and thought this was good education policy. I know you may disagree with that, but I don't see the relevance in this lobbying effort, because the reason why you're hearing this bill today is because I decided to put it on the agenda. Now, the motives of the sponsor's not here, so I guess you can't ask the question to the sponsor of who brought this bill to him, or if he came up with it himself, or if it was constituent driven. But I would encourage you to confine your question to Ms. Casteen to the actual components of the bill.
Okay. Mr. Chair, for clarification, I was not suggesting that you were lobbied by any means. I'm curious to know where this has gone. We have heard the bill, the House version of this, where we spoke a lot about what LifeWise is and was and does. And so I wanted to remind people that this is basically the same bill, but now allows a credit for that. And I think it's important to point it out. You share that you haven't heard of LifeWise, but we spoke at length about this program when we heard this bill the first time. So again, by no means did I assume or suggest that you were lobbying. I'm curious to see what has, the process of how this has gotten to be where it wasn't nothing, and now we're starting to see it over and over. I mean, we're hearing the same bill again. So thank you.